Hello and welcome, dear listeners, to episode 232 of The Reformed Gamers, the podcast all about theology, video games, and grading out the big three, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm your host, Micah, and joining me today is co-host of the Backlog Breakdown Podcast, friend of the show, Nate McKeever. How you doing, Nate?
I'm pretty good, Mike. Oh, my gosh. Sorry about that. I'm pretty good, man. We were talking for a minute there, living that new dad life energy, which what I will say is it presents its own unique challenges to someone in their 40s. It is definitely not a middle-aged man's game. But by the
I was thinking we might redo that intro just then, but we're just embracing the full-on dad life. Was that some sort of baby monitor situation going on?
That was a timer, for things. But yeah, no, we're doing well. We're sort of here in the McKeever household. We're sort of just we're sort of in it. I don't know if you would call it thriving, but we are surviving and we're sort of adapting, but we're definitely enjoying it. Do wish there was a little more sleep involved, but for all parties,
absolutely, of course. You know, it wouldn't be a newborn baby without those weeks and weeks of sleepless nights, or not much sleep, I should say. But man, we're really, really thankful that you're taking out some time with us here at TRG. You know, during this busy season. And yeah, we're obviously super thrilled about the situation over there and praying for you guys. So yeah, really cool.
I'm just glad to be, I was just going to say, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to sort of like you and I have had these conversations in the past, and I'm just sort of excited to you and I know, like we both know that I love talking to you about this stuff. So.
Well, yeah, we're gonna have to, you guys, the catchphrase over at the breakdown is good at being bad at brevity. I think Logan's he'll have some words with me if we go over 2.5 hours or something. So we'll have to keep it tight, keep it succinct.
We'll rein it in,
but we'll see what we can do. But yes, dear listeners, thank you for joining us on episode 232. Just a couple of housekeeping things, of course. As you know, I'm not the usual host around here. Usually Logan is behind the mic doing all this stuff, and I'm with him. But Logan is out on adoption leave right now. They are expecting their first adopted child any day now, any week now. So they are preparing for that and sort of nesting and doing all the good things that they need to do there. So like Nate and Megan, be keeping Logan and Camilla in your prayers with all that. Last episode, Adam and I revealed the inaugural edition of the Dear Listener Fantasy Critic League for 2023, which is open to the community. And I'm happy to announce really that we are full. That league has filled up pretty quickly. I got my last roster spot filled today, and or the member spot in the league, not roster spot. I'm thinking about like actual like games on a roster. But we're thrilled to get that kicked off. Yeah, absolutely. Nate, you're obviously in the Dear Critics, which kind of originally started all this out. So yeah, we just wanted to get another Fantasy Critic League open to the community, kind of spread that love of a Fantasy Critic to others, and we're gonna have a good time over there. Logan and Adam and Skinner are in the league with myself. A bunch of others from the community hopped in. I think Patron, Michael Toller, Aaron L. White. We got a bunch of cool people in there.
Cool.
So yeah, we're ready to rock and roll over there. So we'll be hammering down those details soon. We got a thread over in Discord, guys. I'll be reaching out, and we'll be talking about the rules and details about all that here coming up later on in December. Speaking of December, this is going to be our final episode of the month. It's really going to be releasing, I think, on December 1st or 2nd, something like that.
Man.
Or no, not that early, excuse me. It's going to be releasing early, like first or second week of December. And then that's going to be it. Usually, it's sort of tradition around here at TRG. We only produce one episode in December, just as we're kind of getting into the holidays, a lot going on, especially this year with Logan and the adoption. So this will be the final episode of the year. And look forward to our sort of TRG's take on the Game of the Year discussions when we get back in January. Of course, Logan will hopefully be back with us then, and we'll have a good time chopping all that up. All right. Nate,
Mm-hmm.
enough preamble. Let's get right to it. What have you been playing, good sir? Let's talk about some video games.
Let's talk about some video games. Well, I mean, you and I, this should come as to no surprise to a lot of people, but like many other people, I'm sort of eyeballs deep in Marvel Snap.
Say what?
Yeah. Well, okay. So, and just like I am a like collectible card game kind of guy. I played Magic the Gathering for years. I currently have MTG Arena on my phone. I don't play it all that much because here's what I will say, and I'm actually sort of running into the same problem with Snap, is that I'm a builder, a tinkerer, and a combo player. I like to win, but I also like to like play around and sort of like do goofy things. And Snap has some great toolkits for that. I have an Infinite deck that I just think is an absolute hoot, even when it loses.
Now, hold on, just a quick interruption. Did you or did you not have a random encounter with our host, Logan Sharp, just the other day on Marvel Snap?
I have the screenshots to prove it. And what I will say is that he beat me on that one. So he got me. Snap. He got me. Now, and to be fair, I wasn't playing my best deck, and I was playing
sandbagging.
I was the deck that I like to play the most is probably the least consistent. Just because, and it's goofy and it just does like this neat trick, and I just like doing the trick. But there is a fairly robust, like there's several, like the meta has pretty much been established, and the game does a good job of like shaking things up. Sometimes depending on like the tile set that like, the 3 zones, like anybody who's played it, like I'm not even going to try to explain it, but like the 3 zones that pop up, right? They do a pretty good job of like mixing up the meta. And sometimes you'll be playing a destruction deck and that'll really sing because you'll get a couple of tiles that will like work with that well. Sometimes you'll get ones that sort of encourage, like there's a mechanic called move, where you can like move cards around and they gain power ups and stuff like that based on that. And so there's different tile arrangements sort of favor different types of decks. Right. Like I talked about, my favorite deck is one with the Infinite. But I have a Devil Dino deck that's all about drawing cards and keeping cards in hand. That's probably like my go-to, honestly. But yeah, it's a really interesting game. I'm looking forward to them having like more cards in the pool to really sort of mix things up. I already have a few cards that I'm really not a fan of.
A little bouncing issue there,
in my opinion, and it's because like I'm a combo player. I like a little bit, and I'm not trying to like, nobody take this as me talking down, but I like a little more finesse and flash. Like I like to play a little bit, and
sure.
Like I mentioned MTG Arena, my problem with these games is that people get in and instead of playing around with a toolkit and really sort of like having fun with the game, it's like, I'm going to build a deck that is just basically not fun to play against.
They just ram it down your throat.
And that is like the complete antithesis of how I play these games and what I want to do with these games. And so there's a lot of frustration. Like Hobgoblin sucks. Shang-Chi sucks. Killmonger sucks. Like,
oh man,
like
naming names.
Oh, I'll drop it. Like, and it's because what they do is they just basically, and I get it. It's part of the game. I mean, when I played Magic the Gathering and Magic Arena, I stopped playing removal and counters because being on the other side of it, that's not fun. Like when basically you're like, hey, look at this cool thing I did. And somebody's like, no, that's not fun. And so I don't play that way, and I'm frustrated because but that I'm not trying to like rant. Like, thank you for.
So then, well then, so okay, I'm not a mobile video game player. I can't remember the last time I played a mobile game for more than 20 minutes or whatever. I just don't. If I'm going to play a game, I'm going to get in front of my big screen or grab the Switch or something like that. At the most mobile, it'll be like just a Switch and undocked mode. So convince me about Marvel Snap, or should you not convince me? Should I just stay away from it because I don't need to get addicted and hooked or whatever? Or like, would you recommend it to someone like me who's just, I'd rather not play a phone game.
Dude,
is it that good?
I think so. Like I think it's one of the best constructed sort of like card games I've seen in a long time.
Okay.
I think it really takes advantage of the fact that it is an electronic, like it's a video game, and it could only be experienced and really played in that condition. It actually sort of the zones and the way that like you win the game actually reminds me of a card game I have called Smash Up, which is a lot of fun. But I think so. There's two things for it. What I would say is I think check it out. If you like card games at all or deck building games at all, check it out. And if it doesn't sort of hook you like pretty early on, like I think it's safe to bounce out. But like the one of the things that's really cool about it.
Is it predatory?
No. And what I will say is like, and Logan touched on it in his patch notes thing. You can play the game without giving any money at all. The season pass is optional. What the season pass really does is it sort of gives you early access to sort of cards that will be introduced into the broader pool of cards later on. But it's like, so right now it's like the season is Wakanda. And so like cards like Black Panther, and there's a couple others that they're popping in, and they're frankly, they're fine in my opinion. But the ones actually, Okoye is really good. She basically powers up all the cards that are still left in your deck.
Awesome.
But it's quick game, dude. Like 3 to 5 minutes per game.
Okay. All right.
And what the way that I would recommend engaging it. Okay. And this is coming from someone who, again, like I've described myself as eyeballs deep, in this is, there's a lot of systems to sort of get lost in, but you'll get these missions almost like daily bounties, and they'll refresh every, like, I think 4 hours. Really only play when you have the bounties, because that's like, you're sort of like doubling down, or just, the ways that I play it sometimes like if I've got like a long wait in a checkout line and I don't want to do self-checkout or something.
Sure.
I do a little bit of the hashtag poop and play, like on the toilet.
Of course.
And with the baby, like, because he's colicky, after we feed him, he has to stay upright. So like somebody has to be holding him.
This is all making sense now. It's the baby, it's the combo, it's the mobile. It's just working out for you.
Like I said, it's a really, I think it's worth checking out. I hesitate
I'm giving you a hard time
to really strongly recommend it, because I will say, like, I have spent some money on this game.
Okay.
But like, honestly, it's not predatory, and they actually build safeguards in too.
More or less than $5?
More.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to ask.
But they even build in safeguards. So like, if you are buying, there's like a premium currency that you can actually pay for. They'll actually put a hard limit on how much you can buy per day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that seems counterintuitive to me as like somebody who's like, bleed the whales dry, part those fools from their money. But I really appreciate it. And I think there's a lot of really cool stuff about the game. So,
okay. And a final question about Marvel Snap. Is it better than Triple Triad from Final Fantasy VIII?
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
Triple Triad was like the best part of Final Fantasy VIII. And it was still okay.
You might be right about that, but okay. Anyways, what else have you been playing, Nate?
I mean, dude, you know what, you and I have been texting about this one, buddy. I'm playing God of War, Dad of Boy Ragnarok edition. I have not rolled credits on it yet, unlike a certain someone else I know. But I am also eyeballs deep in that game. And what I will say, and like, just not to weigh in on the GOTY conversations or anything like that, I can see in a year where you don't have something like Elden Ring, which has been as explosive as it has been, being this easily being like the game of the year contender. Like, my spoiler free sort of like assessment is, I think that this has it's got like, it is top shelf Sony quality. That third person action adventure sort of like game. This is like a more, in my opinion, and again, I haven't finished it yet. This is a more optimistic version of sort of like The Last of Us Part 2, where it's like it is very narrative, very cinematic, very sort of big. It like, I think Adam
Set piece to set piece.
And the story, like just some of the questions and the narratives that I think this story explores. And again, this is not a spoiler, really. Like I'll be as vague as I can. There are parts of the game where you are confronted with the sort of events like and things that you did as Atreus and Kratos that you did in the first game, and you're really confronted with the morality of those choices in a very real way, even to the point where it's like, you're like there are conversations where it's like, I thought we did the right thing, and it's like, but did we? And it's like you're left to wrestle with this sort of the real impacts that some of the decisions that you made as a player, and and again, it's sort of you're not really making decisions, you're just along for the ride, but
right.
And there's just a lot of really. And again, this sort of the fathers and sons thing. I know there's been a lot of like sort of dismissal of like, Atreus is just a whiny teenage boy. And I'm like, have you talked to teenage boys? They are kind of like subhuman, Yeah. And so I think, as
well, if I can
go ahead,
interject real quick right here about Atreus, one thing that he does disagree with Kratos throughout the game, especially in the first half or so. And but you can see the motivations behind why he's doing these things and why he's bucking Kratos. And you can be like, okay, I see you're not just being a bratty teenager. You've got real legitimate reasons why you're doing these things and why you're being sneaky. I guess that's not really a spoiler. He's kind of sneaking around his dad a little bit early in the game, and you can see the motivations there. So it's not just, oh, you're being a bratty teenager. He is being a teenager, but there's one scene in particular where they kind of lay into it. It's really, really well done. But a lot of conflict there. But sorry, go on with
no. I was just gonna say, like, and I think like it's a really well done story, and it's like arguably, Josh and I were sort of talking about this recently. And he said, he asked me, he's like, is it your game of the year? And I said, I don't know. I said, what I will say about it so far, and again, I haven't finished it and I haven't played, like, I don't play a ton of new stuff. But I said, this is my favorite thing that I've played all year. And it might be one of my favorite things I've played in a long time. And I think like it does it like overall, I think what I would say, and it's sort of like and I haven't played Elden Ring. So this is sort of me speaking from a very sort of cribbed sort of perspective. Right.
Right.
And I know that Elden Ring in a lot of ways sort of made the soul genre like super accessible. What I would say is that I think overall, God of War seems to me like it's a better overall total package, like higher production values, better sound. Like, do you have like some of the, like there are shortcomings with like, there are parts of God of War that I'm kind of like, oh, I wish I hadn't done this. There are criticisms and critiques I could level, but it's like, it's that Colin Moriarty from Last Stand sort of uses that production per square inch. And this is just like, so far out of what I've played this year, this just sings to me. Like it's beautiful. Sound design is good. Combat is really pretty rich. Yeah, you can make it sort of button mashy and dumb it down. But I think it also has a lot of like nuance. I just, the storyline and the narratives, are they maybe a little like rote or trite? Possibly, but I also think it's really good, and I think it's a good story, and I don't know. So, like all that being said, it's my favorite thing that I've played all year. I think I'm in love with it. I haven't beaten it yet, and I'm just like, yeah.
It's the game that that game when you're not playing it, you keep thinking about it. When you're not playing it, you want to get back to it. That's usually a good sign, that it's a game you're really enjoying, obviously. And I've had that feeling the most all year with this game. where like I'm like, oh yeah, I can't wait to get back to that side quest I was doing, or like, oh yeah, I'm about to upgrade this thing, and then that means that, or blah blah, all these sorts of things. The game is a really really good sequel. You could be forgiven for playing God of War Ragnarok, finishing it to completion, and be like, yeah, that was kind of like 2018. I'm like, yeah, I can see why you say that. There's a lot. The foundation was built there, but I think what they've expanded on in this version is in the combat, in the level design is a lot better. I feel like the way they tailor it just so where you see something kind of you pass something that you can't get to, but it's in like a hole, and you're like, okay, let me get back to that. And you kind of circle around. The way that they weave it all together is really really well done. I think to where you feel like you made the full round of this kind of side questy area. You got all the chests and all the secret things or whatever, and you feel like you searched everywhere, and it's kind of led you right back to the beginning again. I like how they did that a lot. I can't remember if I mentioned that on the last show. Maybe I did, but a really good level design, except that it's so 100% a PlayStation 4 game, and you can totally tell.
Yeah,
the way that they funnel you through cracks, and you do the whole shimmy thing, or the fast travel system is still the same and not great. It doesn't take advantage of, the PlayStation's 5 powerhouse. It wasn't, built that way from the ground up from a design level. So you can see a lot of that kind of old gen sort of stuff going on. But combat is fantastic. They've really added some really interesting and creative wrinkles to the combat that make it just a blast to play. Like I said, last episode, I think you got 5, maybe 6 difficulties. So you make it as easy or as difficult as you want it. I'm playing right on normal.
Give me balance.
It's a good challenge. I've died several times.
Pro tip,
and
just a bit of a pro tip. You and I had an offline conversation, like we were texting back and forth, or we were talking.
Yeah,
but for anybody who wants to sort of circumvent some of the PlayStation 4-ness of traversal, where it's like there's parts where it's like press circle to skip over this log or shimmy through the crack or whatever. You can actually go into the gameplay settings, and it might be one of the accessibility options. You can turn it on so that pretty much everything, with the exception of like grappling up to like different points, you just like walk up to stuff and you can start climbing it. You can which I like personally, because it does feel like it's like walk up to this ledge, and then you kind of just semi seamlessly transition into Kratos sort of shimmying or whatever. So
yeah, that's a good tip. I think the thing that sort of sets it apart from the original God of War 2018 is the story is just so much more fleshed out, and the world building is so much better. There's so many more characters in this game that you're introduced to, major characters. The way that you're able to go to all the realms now and really explore. There's just a lot more meat on the bones as far as the story goes. And I like all that. It's really interesting. It's really layered. It's the way that it builds up to the end. The side quests we keep mentioning, and me and Adam talked about the side quests last time. They're all really interesting and really worth doing. So all that's really stepped up. I do think Cory Barlog probably did a better job in the director's chair than Eric Williams did. It seemed like kind of the just beat to beat pace, and some of the way some of the scenes were shot, I think Cory probably did a better job in the director's chair. But other than that, I think it's like you said, the production is just out of this world. Between this and Horizon Forbidden West, they're just kind of dripping with quality. They do both suffer from, both God of War Ragnarok and Horizon both suffer from this kind of hand-holdy, let my partner or the main character Aloy would just like blurt out the answer to a puzzle. I'm surprised, or something like that.
I guess I'm kind of surprised, because I know that was a complaint with Horizon. I'm surprised that there wasn't sort of an option to just by default turn that off.
Yeah, this game isn't as bad at that as Horizon. I didn't think Aloy would just straight up tell you the answer in like 5 seconds, I feel like. But this one's a little bit more, you may be stuck and they're like, hey, there's something behind that wall over there, or just, whatever.
Yeah, there's something kind of thing. There's something over here, or hey, look at that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of that where like, well, I'm just, browsing around looking at loot, and I'm not ready yet for the puzzle, but thanks for that. There's a little bit of that going on that I don't appreciate. Maybe you can dial it back with accessibility that I just haven't seen. These are minor gripes. The game is fantastic. We talk a lot about review scores being in the Dear Critics, and we got the Listener League booting up. I think it got a 94 Open Critic score.
Yeah, it did, baby.
Yeah, you know well about that. I don't know if it deserves the 94 necessarily. I'm still kind of
processing.
Processing it all. Like I said, I've beaten the game. I'm going back through and finishing up the platinum, sweeping up the side quests, which I'm having a lot of fun with. So still processing where it's going to slot in as far as game of the year and kind of all that sort of stuff. But it has been a fascinating conversation, a fascinating juxtaposition between Elden Ring. That conversation has bubbled up a lot between God of War and Elden Ring, and there's really valid conversations on both sides. It reminds me of 2018 when God of War was going up against Red Dead Redemption. I feel like a lot of similar conversations were popping up around that time. And but either way, whatever takes home, and we're talking about the Game Awards, Jeff Keighley's Game Awards, I suppose. Whatever takes home the crown, it's kind of whatever.
Yeah.
But we're all having fun.
Yeah.
With all these games this year. So whether you like Ragnarok, whether you like Elden Ring, they're two both fantastic games. But having a great time with Ragnarok. It's it's just such a roller coaster to kind of put a bow tie on it.
I think,
or put a cap on it.
I think one of my favorite ways that I've heard it described is that Adam basically, I think it was in the Dear Critics chat, said that he has heard it described not only as epic but as an epic, and I'm vibing on that. Like, I really like that, and I think it's an appropriate descriptor.
Yeah, I wish we could talk more about the story. I'm assuming once Logan's back and has played the game, he'll want to do some sort of spoiler cast. So hopefully we'll have an opportunity to dive into a lot of that, because there's just a lot there, like I said.
Look me up, Logan. Come on.
But yeah, a lot to talk about there with that old Ragnarok. But Nate, let's go ahead and pivot here to the topic of the show. And here we are. We're winding down to the end of 2022. And I thought it would be a good time. We like to do these episodes from time to time where we do a big three check-in. Oftentimes we do it around E3 time during the summer, where we check in on Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony to see, kind of just get a pulse check, see what they've been doing lately, how they've been doing, what's coming up, what should we look forward to. So I figured here at the end of the year would be a good time to do that. And what I want to try to accomplish, the only thing I really want to accomplish, is I want to grade, grade school style, A, B, C, D, F, each of the big three for 2022. Give them a letter grade. And let's talk a little bit about their games that they had that came out, a little bit of some of the top headlines that were taking place in those three realms. And we'll look ahead to 2023 and kind of just prognosticate a little bit and have a little fun. So let's kick it off with Nintendo. I feel like Nintendo, you either have to start with Nintendo or end with them, because you can't have Sony, Nintendo, then Microsoft. You must include Microsoft and Sony together, sort of in a conversation almost.
Especially
Nintendo's
right
always
now.
the outlier. Yeah,
Especially right
Nintendo's
now.
always the outlier. It's always doing their own thing, marching to the beat of their own drum. So just a couple of this isn't a couple. This is the entirety of Nintendo's first party, meaning Nintendo published, Nintendo created games that came out this past year. Of course, the year was bookended by Pokemon games. Pokemon Arceus and Scarlet and Violet just came out. Arceus, obviously, in January, I believe. Triangle Strategy, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Mario Strikers, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Splatoon 3, Bayonetta 3, Live Alive, and Nintendo Switch Sports. If I left off a game, Nintendo fans, please let me know. But I think that is exhaustive.
I'm not sure that Triangle Strategy is first party, but it is exclusive right now.
True. That is Square.
That's Square. And Triangle Strategy and Octopath both are sort of interesting ducks, because there's a bit of a question sometimes, is like, why hasn't Octopath Traveler come to PlayStation? And now Octopath Traveler 2 is supposed to, and actually it's going to be looks like it's going to be excluded. But a lot of that is that, from what I understand, is that Nintendo holds the publishing rights internationally. Like Square Enix holds the publishing rights in Japan. So they could technically do a Japanese version for PlayStation. I'm sure that they have some sort of contract with Nintendo or whatever, but like Nintendo holds the publishing rights for that. So whether or not that migrates onto a different platform altogether is pretty much
just take Triangle Strategy out. Let's just take that one out, because I did forget that was a Square Enix game. I thought the article I got threw me for a loop there. I thought this was
they did you dirty
stuff. But anyway, looking at this list here, Nate, just take a look at this. Like I said, I believe there's no other first party games, but if you think of any, obviously toss them out. Obviously, we're not grading this right now, but what do you think of this list? Is this a good year for Nintendo exclusives?
It's fine. I mean, Kirby is good from what I hear. It's like mid 80s, I think, on OpenCritic.
I'm really looking forward to picking that up on a sale. Probably, yeah. I want to play that one.
Parker, my buddy Parker, Parker. He played it, really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to that. Bayonetta, I think, is sort of interesting. It's kind of funny. Like it's funny. I don't know that Platinum is sort of like chained to this. You know, like they've only really found success with like Bayonetta and Nier Automata. It's not that
a few others.
There's some other stuff, but that's that's been their sort of like big.
Sure.
Big. I don't know. They're big guns.
They're tentpole IP.
I just, and here's the thing with Nintendo every year is like, outside of like the big Mario or the big Zelda release, or even like what was it last year, Metroid Dread, and their first party stuff are their prime movers, right? So like that's really you buy a Switch not for what's on the store, but because you're going to buy Nintendo games for it. And so it's in some ways it is a bit of an exclusives machine for me. I think their lineup's fine. I think like Nintendo sort of it's fine. Like it's good, but it's not blow my socks off.
I think you and I, the quote unquote hardcore gamer, people that listen to video game podcasts such as this one, I think most of us would look at it and be like, yeah, pretty good. You know, a couple of things here for me, but nothing like, those Zelda or Mario years or whatever. I think when you look at the sales, Nintendo is just as happy as ever. Splatoon 3 blowing up. Pokemon, obviously, setting records. I've got a note right here that Pokemon Scarlet and Violet sold 10 million copies in its first 3 days, which I think is Nintendo's fastest selling game of all time. I think.
It wouldn't surprise me. But and here's kind of like my problem, though. So, yeah, they're happy as clams because they're selling you 10-year-old hardware and they're selling you games that don't really run on that 10-year-old hardware.
Oh, boy. Yeah, we can get into that.
I'm not trying to be too mean. But I'm not trying to be unkind here, but like, this is my problem. And like Nintendo fans, please don't take this as an insult. I want better for you. Like,
don't at him. Don't at him.
Like, go ahead. Send me your hate mail. I kind of don't care. I'm not on social media. Like I'm not doing social media here for a little bit. But I want better for you. Like, the fact of the matter, and some of it might be an optimization sort of issue with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. But the fact of the matter remains is that like and you guys can scream at me all you want that like power doesn't matter. I'm telling you, you get a slightly more robust machine sort of in there and you start seeing some, like, especially with games like Breath of the Wild. I just played that for the first time a couple of years ago and it's fine. I'm not trying to like, it's good. It's a good game, but there were parts where the game sort of chugged and didn't know what to do. And there's like some witch magic optimization going on there. And it's like, if you just had a little bit more juice to throw at this would be like an easy, seamless experience. And it just like, it kind of bums me out. It bums me out.
It'll be fascinating to see I could see it with a developer like Game Freak, kind of, the way they churn out the games, and they're definitely Nintendo is definitely going to hit those dates for those Pokemon games, so they're not going to delay it. So maybe the product suffers. I'd be really curious to see how Tears of the Kingdom comes out here next year, and to see, does that not have the Scarlet and Violet type of struggles, but does it struggle in some ways where you can really, really start seeing the age of the Switch for this AAA tentpole major IP release? If you start seeing it there, you're like, okay, well, what's interesting, I was thinking about is, I think maybe a prediction of mine from 6-12 months ago was that we would have the Switch Pro by the time Tears of the Kingdom release, because they always have the consoles kind of bumping up against each other when a Zelda game releases. Kind of here, that's why they did it with Twilight Princess and Breath of the Wild. So, you would think, okay, Switch Pro for Tears of the Kingdom. That makes sense. You can also get it for Switch, but they'll have it for Switch Pro, surely, because it's going to need it, right? That's kind of my thought.
I mean,
I don't know if that's going to happen, but what I'm saying is I'm curious to see how that game turns out on this old Switch hardware. Is it going to be crazy optimized in a great way to where it's fantastic, no issues whatsoever, or are we going to have a situation akin to Scarlet and Violet and look at this was it 6-7 year piece of hardware now, 7-year-old piece of hardware, and be like, yeah, it's time for an upgrade.
I mean, and again, I'm not trying to bag on the Switch. It's a really cool little piece of kit.
Yeah.
But I think especially sort of with the Steam Deck and everything else. And dude, I have a backbone for my phone, and I do PS Remote Play all the time on it. And my Switch hardly gets picked up anymore because I'm like, I can have similar experience, and again, I'm not trying to I'm just saying and especially there's a hope that I want Tears of the Kingdom to be, I'm not saying that it needs to be like a God of War or Elden Ring level spectacle, but I hope that it is pushing the base model Switch to its utter limits, because I think and I'm concerned, one, Tears of the Kingdom, and I'll just say this right now, will not come out in a state like Scarlet or Violet. It just will not. Nintendo won't do that. To that. I think if they can get away with it in Pokemon because Pokemon fans just sort of eat it up.
Because it'll sell 10 million copies in 3 days.
Yeah,
anyways.
It doesn't matter. New Pokemon, people lose their minds. Tears of the Kingdom, I think dude, if it comes out and if it's anything less than immaculate, Breath of the Wild was such a giant footprint in gaming, that I just can't, and here's, I guess my thing is I would love to see a Switch Pro or a Super Switch or something. But Nintendo's just overall philosophy kind of bums me out. Their online stuff is just atrocious. The Switch Online service is kind of garbage. Say what you will, I beat on Game Pass all the time, but dude, the Nintendo Switch Online and Nintendo Switch Online expansion are just it's unacceptable. The fact that your party chat is through an app on your phone, Nintendo, I want to love you, Nintendo. Let me love you. Yeah. Stop sucking.
Yeah, it seems it has the appearance, and Sony is falls victim to this as well. Is that they just try to do the bare minimum, not with their games, but in almost everything else. Yeah, it's no, the God of War, it's gonna be a crazy good game. Mm-hmm. No denying that, but there's so many shortcuts in other areas. In services, in pricing, in all sorts of kind of anti-consumer quote unquote things. They're sort of brother and sister in that way a little bit. I kind of forgot. I lost my train of thought where I was going with that. But anyway, I agree. I don't think Tears of the Kingdom is going to come out in that state. I want to see how it's going to do. Yeah. I want to see the Switch's swan song and see how that piece of hardware goes out with a title like Zelda.
There's a part of me that wants that game to come out and blow people's minds, just come out and legitimately sell me on it, because I'm a hard sell there.
I wouldn't mind it being something as different as Majora's Mask to Ocarina of Time was. I feel like those were pretty different titles and kind of their design and everything.
Just give me a freaking hook shot. That's all I want.
But yeah. So real quick, are you a Xenoblade Chronicles guy at all, Nate?
They appeal to me. Like I love the big meaty JRPGs. Like, you know, I platinum Dragon Quest 11 this last year. Really had a great time with that. But dude, I'm a middle-aged man with a new baby. I need a new JRPG series living in my headspace. Like I need a hole in my head.
Yeah, they look really, really enticing to me. You know, I played Xenogears, the original Xenogears back on PS1. Loved that game and didn't touch the Xeno series ever since. And
that's because they did you dirty with the ending of Xenogears. Like,
yeah, it kind of was. It kind of was that didn't put a great taste in my mouth. But these games do look super appealing to me, and I've always kind of wanted to, but just never have. You know, the length of JRPGs sometimes keeps me at bay. Not that that's an excuse on some other games. I'll drop, 70 hours in some other games, no problem. But anyway, I've always appreciated them from afar. And, I know Logan enjoys them and others in the community, many others. And I'm like, yeah, that looks like a fun series, but yeah, just not right now. I don't know.
Maybe someday.
Maybe if there's a Switch Pro.
Maybe someday. I know that like, there are a few guys in the breakdown community who are super into it. I'm pretty sure Wes, the Henshin dad, is. Of course, that guy just Yeah.
I was trying to do that and also do some research just to go back and look at some of the major sort of headlines that Nintendo had for 2022, and it was almost like tumbleweed rolling through the dusty western streets. It's like they were kind of so low key. They were just doing their own thing, business as usual. Let me crank out a Pokemon game. Let me and sell. Let's get the Splatoon out and be this crazy. Is the fastest selling game ever in Japan. 3.45 million copies sold in Japan in the launch weekend for Splatoon 3. It's like ho hum, just breaking records as Nintendo with this what we're calling average lineup. This ho hum lineup. No Mario, no Zelda, no Metroid, all that, whatever these kind of games that us hardcore gamers like. All the while they're just like laughing all the way at the bank.
Well, and again, like I think too, like Splatoon and Splatoon 3, like I'm not trying to dog on those. Like I know that these things are huge financial successes. But I'm just saying like they kind of like it just sort of flies under the radar. And for people who are sort of like super deep in those environments and those economies, like they're like, yeah, no. And I'm like, and maybe that's just sort of a bit of a weakness in sort of like my wheelhouse. Like maybe I'm just not the equipped for or whatever, like, but I just look at that and I'm like, well, okay, like cool. Like, and don't get me wrong. Like Nintendo's like one of those companies, like they've still got like Wii money. They've still got the like go pound sand money. Like they give, two farts about what anybody thinks or says. Like, I mean, especially with the way that the Switch is selling, but I really don't see them doing anything exciting like tech wise. And it's kind of like, well, yeah, you have Splatoon 3, which is basically just a better version of Splatoon 2, which, hey, I'm not opposed to that. And like, it's just like, it's kind of one of those things where, yeah, like we're kind of looking at it as like ho hum or whatever. And I think for us, for you and for me, it is kind of like a ho hum, like, it's fine. It's like, but I think overall too, like as far as the impact of like, just like games, the sort of games enthusiasm sphere, like outside of the diehard Nintendo people, they haven't done anything to raise any eyebrows. Like, and like, what's like missing from what's pretty absent, even though it is on the other two. And here's the other thing. Nintendo, I don't really think looks at itself as being in competition with Sony or Microsoft. I think, you said it earlier that they sort of just do their own thing. Like if these are three students, right? Nintendo sort of, it's a good performer not making a ton of noise most of the time. Every once in a while, we'll sort of hit you with a bolt of like just pure brilliance, and like Nintendo's great at sort of like iteration and expansion. Like Mario Odyssey, great 3D platformer. Like the fact that it has me even like interested in a 3D, like I played it and beat it. I hate 3D platformers, and I was like, no, I'm going to check this out. And so I'm saying like it's not to like throw shade at them or anything, but it's like they just don't make a lot of noise. They just kind of like they're over there, they're sort of doing their own thing, just counting their piles of money. And there's a part of me that just wants to look at them and say, spend some of that money, fools. Like, if and other guys have said this too. If Nintendo would sort of throw a little bit of power behind their IP, they like Sony and Microsoft both would have no shot, because Nintendo is right now they're sort of running on nostalgia, and it's working really well. But at some point in time, like, you know, guys like you and me, we're like that age range is going to like phase out, and they're going to be kids who like nostalgia wise, they're going to be looking at things like Scarlet and Violet and being like, oh, well, okay, like cool. That was like their sort of like look back. And so I'm just kind of like that's my one concern is like, I'm like, Nintendo, you have all this like money that like you guys are making hand over fist. And like, I'm like, hey, that's cool. Be safe, you know, sort of do like the things that are sort of in a way, their games are a little bit transcendent. They're a little timeless. Like, you know, are they sort of family friendly-ish, maybe a little kiddie-ish, maybe, but they're also awesome. Like, so, I mean, like they, and well,
you know, it's just their model, you know, it's just always seemingly going to work. You know, they want to have an inexpensive entry into their ecosystem. So their consoles, their hybrids, their handhelds are always going to be at an affordable price. You know, you can't sell 10 million copies of a Pokemon game in 3 days without selling 60 plus million units of a console. You know what I'm saying? You got to have that install base there. So, you know, when you're talking about pushing the envelope technologically and having, you know, like, well, what if Zelda looked like God of War? That's not going to happen under their model, because then you'd have to have a machine that's cost $600 to push that hardware, and they're never going to do that. They don't care about that. They want you to own their system, so they're going to price it $299. Well, what's $299 going to get you in the hardware space? Not a lot graphically. You see what I'm saying? You know, I'm speaking somewhat ignorantly and generally, but they'd rather you own the console than you have a sweet slick console that can run Zelda at 120 FPS, you know? So they're much more concerned with that. And you know, is that going to change? No, because inexpensive, cheap stuff is always going to appeal to families and kids. And, you know, you don't buy your kid the big OLED TV, you buy them the, 24-inch TCL.
But
you know?
I think too, like the other thing though, is like, you're talking about inexpensive. Like if that's the case, then why are they the only like developer that never drops its prices? Like their first party and exclusive stuff rarely, if ever, goes on sale.
That's true. And, you know, that's just them, you know, kind of the, you know, we wish they would, you know, throw you a bone a little bit more to the consumer. You know, I guess that's where they get you on the back end. They know you mentioned it earlier, they're an exclusives machine. They know that. They look at their top 50 sold games on the platform and see that 45 of them are Nintendo published games. In fact, you know, like that's not an over exaggeration, I don't think. So there again, if they can get you in the door at $200, $300, and then, you're shelling out 40, 50 per piece of software, man, that's, you know, like you talking about them having Wii money, you know, they're very cash rich. They're very liquid. They've got a lot of money, and I just don't know if it's going to change. You know, the question we had in the doc is, you know, can they continue to rely on this sort of exclusivity, almost entirely exclusive mantra? I think they totally can, because they're always targeting kids, which creates long-term nostalgia. And that's going to keep your audience for years and years and years to come. And those nostalgic kids will look at something like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and be like, I don't care about those glitches. I love Pokemon, and they'll buy it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what's happening.
I just, like I said, I do think like long term, I'm a little concerned about that model. And my thing is like, I'm not asking them to go wild. Like, here's the thing. They make money hand over fist with the Switch. Like, they make money on the Switch. That has like making money on consoles is a relatively new thing. And I'm saying like, I'm not saying that you need to make a Switch where you're taking a loss on it, although you could probably afford that. But I'm saying like make a version of it where it's like you're breaking even, you know, like take a little bit of that money and again, but Nintendo's like, they're a solid performer. They sort of do their own thing all the time. I think they've had a good year. Is it their best one? No. I mean, like,
well, let's go ahead and answer this question. I have this later on for the kind of outlook ahead to 2023, but let's go ahead and just answer it here. Do you think a Switch Pro is coming out next year, or a Switch successor?
No.
Switch 2.
I think I do. I am in the camp where I think they should call it the Super Switch. I think they need
that would be.
I think they need to bring that stuff back, like the Super NES, like all that. And I mean, I would love for them to do that. I just like Nintendo is like the one thing is like they lack ambition. Like, and that, like, so it's like, and again, if they like they're a student in the classroom, solid performer, they do well, they make high marks, but you can tell that it's like they're almost bored. Like,
okay,
and my one thing would just be like, hey, like get like a little bit of fire in your belly. Like, you know, stop being so content. Stop sort of resting with your laurels. Like, get a little bit of fire in your belly. That's it. Like, and I want to see like do something like, cause like, dude, like, here's the thing. And in a way, like, it's yeah. I just think like they could be such a disruptor. In like, you know, I think like, you know, Game Pass is sort of a major disruptor in just the games market and everything now. Dude, Nintendo could, you know, put some real fear, I think, in Sony and Microsoft both, just if they were just sort of be unafraid to spend.
It's always, you have those, you know, PC mods, you know, people making their own things or whatever. We just kind of wish just once that they would kind of go all out, you know, with a console like they did when they were making, you know, the N64 and the GameCube and those types of things, where like they're kind of keeping pace with Microsoft and Sony on like the spec front. And to have that really awesome looking Zelda or Mario, that would be pretty cool. Not that they always have to do that, but that would be, I would love to see them fully kind of unleashed in that way. That's never going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, Breath of the Wild is beautiful and it's a technical marvel. Like, don't get like use that filter. Like, absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, like I think the GameCube did burn them a little bit, that era, and so yeah, it's very unlikely.
Yeah,
but
sure. Okay, well, we've talked way more about Nintendo than I thought we might. So closing them out. Yeah. What grade are you giving Nintendo for 2022? What letter grade would you give?
I give them like a B+. Like it is a strong performance. They're pretty strong performance, but like I said, they lack fire, they lack inspiration, they lack ambition. And I think like frankly, I think they're fine there. They're like, I'm cool. Like,
yeah. I think we feel the same way and are saying the same things. I'm going to say B-, just because, you know, not a whole lot for me personally that I would want to dive into. But kind of the, you know, I can't be too harsh on them for the reasons that we just said about, you know, all the millions of copies that they're selling. They're doing just fine, kind of business as usual. And, you know, no real kind of scandal or anything to fuss at them about. So, you know, just solid year, Nintendo being Nintendo. I'll give them a B-. All right. Microsoft, Xbox. Let's look at their 2022. And, you know, when you look at their exclusive games, their first party output, boy, this one, this has got to be one of the roughest years in Xbox history, if not the roughest year.
Yeah.
They have As Dusk Falls, Grounded, which was in early access last year, but finally got its official release this year. Pentiment, which recently got released. And that's the end of the list.
Yeah.
Not that they didn't have, exclusives on Game Pass or whatever, but that is from the first party output. That's all Microsoft put out.
Next year, though, bro. Next year, Game Pass is going to be lit.
Sure, of course. That's what Phil says. Now, Nate, let's be you. I'm talking to myself as well. Let's be nice during this Xbox segment, okay?
Like, here's the thing. The biggest gig is that, and Penimit's got critical acclaim. It's like a lot of, like, I'm hearing like really great things about it all the time. Grounded is like one of those things that like people are into this game hard.
Yeah, it's like the Sea of Thieves people, I feel like a little bit.
It's like it's sort of a bit of it's got that same, like, it's that same energy. Like, there's a bunch of people who are into Sea of Thieves, and like the people who are into Grounded are super into Grounded, and I'm hearing really good things about it. Cog from Defining Duke, Ty Guy Travis from Season Gaming, and he's done a whole bunch of stuff, but he's over at IGN. They're both like super on this game. I think it's a really Grounded is really, it's like one of those things where, like, just with Sea of Thieves, I see it and I'm like, oh man, like, I wouldn't mind checking that out. That'd be kind of cool. Like, I'm not really a games as a service kind of guy, although Destiny 2, this was the year that I just sort of fell down into that well. But yeah.
Well, just real quick, some other sort of notable Game Pass sort of, exclusives, hits, or whatever you want to call it. Of course, they had a Plague Tale Requiem recently, which was, day one on Game Pass. That was a big sort of Xbox push there. They finally had Persona 5 Royal showed up on Game Pass. Shredder's Revenge was day one on Game Pass. I know Power Wash Simulator was a big kind of cult hit. Signalis, a recent kind of... survival horror, that's JRPG kind of thing going on.
Dear Critic Fantasy League regret. Should trust him again.
But they recently had the horror game Scorn. It was kind of more like a puzzle game. They had Somerville, and then the recent hit, which has been out for PC for a while, but just hit Game Pass, Vampire Survivors, which is kind of taking Game Pass by storm right now, currently, as we're recording this one. So not to say that Xbox and Game Pass in particular wasn't without some heavy hitters and some games that definitely draw your attention if you're in that ecosystem. It's just when you look at their first party output, it's a ghost town, man. You're talking about an official release for an old game that was in early access, and then 2 kind of indie games, not a single AAA big budget game. Now, of course, that's, we know why. Starfall was supposed to be here. Redfall
was
supposed to be produced from Arcane, and those guys got pushed to 2023. But let's just looking at 2022 and the games that we have here and any others that come to your mind, kind of let's talk about Microsoft a little bit and kind of their output of games for this year.
I think I don't know if you use the word abysmal or not, but abysmal. Like, and it's definitely not like Xbox One era, but I'm like, I like to beat up Game Pass. It's like sort of like it's a bit of a hobby horse for me. But I do feel bad for people who are sort of fans of, and it's not to say that there aren't games that they're excited about and there aren't games that they've been playing, because, whether we like it or not, Game Pass is the best value in gaming. TM. We've been told that till, like they'll like some people screech that from their deathbeds. But I kind of like let's, looking at Microsoft, it's like, I'm a little concerned. And it's like, and I know it's easy to sort of, they have not been able to get anything across the finish line since these major acquisitions. Like, everything that's come out from, like, Psychonauts 2, all of the, like, that's all been stuff that was already in development. Starfield was already in development. And like, somehow this stuff, it's like, and then you look at the botched release of Halo Infinite, now Forza did gangbusters for them last year. Right. So it's not all doom and gloom, but like, I'm just saying, I'm kind of like, I'm concerned. Like, And here's the thing. I don't like to beat up on Microsoft just to beat up on Microsoft. I was actually a 360 dude in the PS3 360 era because I thought that the 360 was just a more interesting machine. Was it as powerful? No, but I also didn't need to get a second job to buy it. That is a dig on something said during the PS3 sort of press release, people. So it's like I have no problem sort of like swinging both ways here, like sort of I have no problems punching up and across, but. And then the Xbox One, like really the whole like TV like online all the time stuff. I think that unfortunately they did sort of catch like a bit of a bad rap there. I think like I've heard it from several sources, from several people that basically online DRM and stuff everybody was like sort of pushing that forward. And there's just like Xbox went first and everybody like Sony was like, oh, turn that off. Let's not talk about that. But I look at it and it's like, I think what's interesting is I think even sort of the bad press surrounding sort of like the Xbox Series S, like the Gotham Knights sort of like developers sort of taking shots at the Series S as for the reason why I was like, and like, dude, if I'm being honest, I think like that's them just like looking for a reason to like sort of like talk about their subpar optimization with that game. Like, it's like, no, your game is just kind of not it's not done. And you're looking for something to blame. But like I said, I think like the thing with Starfield being pushed back, it's not that big a surprise. Because it's Bethesda, and this is like they take forever to get stuff out the door. There's like, to me, it's like, and I sort of made that rip earlier, but it's like, dude, like the fact of the matter is like we've been hearing for like the 2 years that these machines have been out in the market. Next year on Game Pass, bro. Next year on Game Pass, bro. And at some point in time, like what I'm saying is, if 2023 comes and like Microsoft doesn't sort of pull the trigger, like if Starfield comes out and it's not good or it's a train wreck or whatever, like there will be blood in the streets, riots and fires kind of deal. And I'm just like, to me, that to me is like, at what point in time, like I like Phil Spencer, and I think like he's doing some really interesting things, but at like what point in time, like where does the buck stop? Like, at what point in time do we stop making excuses for the fact that like you've had these studios that have been working on games for years, that are not moving the needle? And it's like, and it's fine. Like give the studios like time to develop the things that they need, but also at the same time.
Yeah. Well, whether it's, the Perfect Dark Studio, the initiative having assistance from Crystal Dynamics, or the fact that we just heard that, was it one of the Embracer Studios, ex Montreal, I'm crashing and burning on this. They're helping out with Fable, one of the Montreal studios up there. Which one was it? I forgot. It was in one of Jason Schreier's reports recently. But anyway, stuff like that. And going back to the point you said about Microsoft hasn't kind of produced their own wave of games that have been killer in a while. You talk about that big swath of acquisitions they got about 4 or 5 years ago now with Ninja Theory and all those guys. The Psychonauts, Double Fine, all those guys. And then obviously everything since then as well. And it's like you still have to prove it with the way that you produce games, because you didn't prove it with Halo Infinite. You like Starfield is not your game. Psychonauts isn't your game. Hellblade isn't your game. What are the Microsoft produced games? Are the ones that are getting help from these other studios because they cannot get off the ground? Like, that's all I'm hearing. So I'm sort of with you, where like I see smoke, so hopefully there's not fire, but the saying. Yeah. So it kind of worries me when I look at what Microsoft is doing well with their positioning with their services and things like xCloud and Game Pass and the value and the platforms which they allow you to play on and the ways that you engage with it are better than ever. I just worry that the allure is simply the fact that it's available and not the substance there isn't something good and rich, because the games, in my opinion, that they are producing aren't they got a long way to go before they catch up to Sony and Nintendo. Not saying they don't have good exclusive games on their platforms, but anyone can get an exclusive deal for a Plague Tale. Anyone can get an exclusive deal with a third party. I don't want a platform that gathers everything.
And it wasn't even an exclusive deal.
I want you to produce and add to the medium of video games and add your great Halo and Gears games and all these things that are supposed to be awesome, and set yourself apart from the other two is kind of what I'm looking for. And to me, in my opinion, I think you're with me, is that they're not doing that. They haven't proven that yet. They're having some success, but I need to see it more with these AAA big games that, like, so far the Xbox Series generation, like the first party output has been putrid. You got Halo, you got Forza, the couple of games I mentioned here, Age of Empires 4.
Yeah.
What else? Microsoft Flight Simulator? Like, where are the AAA games for the Xbox?
Yeah, I mean, and that's where they've done like the timed exclusive stuff and like Game Pass stuff. Like Darktide, Warhammer Darktide is like exclusive. Like they've had to sort of like shop out for a lot of that stuff, and a lot of that's been like the Game Pass day one exclusive stuff. Like I said, I'm a little concerned. Just like, I want Microsoft to do well. Now I have to, like, full disclosure, like, and I don't think we need to go super, because I think everybody's sort of a little like like Activision Blizzard kinged out. But I think, like, too, like the fact, however you want to look at this, right? And I know that there's a lot of really unhelpful fanboy rhetoric garbage online about this. And what I will say is, like, I think there are legitimate concerns. And frankly, I'm glad that the FTC is sort of saying, hey, like, do I still think the deal will probably go through? Yeah, sure. But I think, like, the fact that the CMA, or is it the CMA over in Europe and the FTC here in the States are sort of like, they're throwing some flags on the play and saying, like, hey, there's questions here and you guys are really going to have to answer this. And I think, and of course, like, listen, we can talk about Crying Jim Ryan here in a little bit, and we can talk about, but I think, like, there's so much like businessese and corporate doublespeak in sort of this that I'm a little like tired of all of it. But the fact of the matter is, with that scenario, it's like, to me, again, it's not a good sign. You come in when this company, because of Bobby Kodik's garbage and his, like, abysmal personal sort of misconduct, you come in because this company's sort of taking a thrashing, and you're like, hey, you're a bit of a wounded animal. We can help you. And then, but it's like, and then too, it's like, and you're coming in and you're going to sort of like snap up what is like the not arguably, what is the biggest franchise in gaming. And it's not to say that things can't change, right? Call of Duty is not a guarantee, but like for the given moment. And I think even especially with this latest release, which was like subpar, like how much do you remember the number that they made, like that the most recent Call of Duty made? I think it was like something like $1 billion in revenue or something like that.
Well, the thing that got me, I don't know what that number is, Nate, that you're referring to. I remember like seeing it. I just don't know what it is. The thing that got me in all these, some of the documents that have been coming out that you're able to see, I think Sony had said that Call of Duty makes like a certain, like, it was redacted amount, like a certain times amount. Like Call of Duty is blank redacted times more popular than all of our best first party studios games combined.
Well,
like that's sort of like the
you
weight
can
of it.
Do a sort of a Google search, and I was doing this for a while. Call of Duty annually moves 25 to 30 million units a year. Like, okay, now, and that could be different generations and everything, but 25 to 30 million units a year. Spider-Man, okay, the exclusive that some Microsoft fans get sort of like, well, give us Spider-Man.
Best-selling PlayStation game.
One of the
Spider-Man.
best-selling, 33 million units in 4 years. Okay, there's a massive, or it was like 3 or 4 years, massive disparity there. You know, the thing is like, and again, and I'm not trying to throw something like I've heard the Final Fantasy VII remake being locked down. I think it was like 7 million units. I can't remember. 7 million units in 3 years versus 25 million to 30 million. And what I will say is like, do I get it? Is Call of Duty as sort of beloved or cherished as some of these other games? No. And I know a lot of these fans would rather have some of this other stuff. But what I'm saying is like from a perspective, from a sheer economic value, that is a really big stick. And I think we need to be careful about who we give that stick to.
Yeah, and it's a bad argument. You mentioned about some of the the rhetoric online about it. The fanboys will call out like, well, why don't you have Final Fantasy exclusive on that sort of stuff? It's like Final Fantasy produces or makes like a fraction of what something like The Last of Us makes and sells, or like a big first party Sony game, which we just mentioned is like a fraction of one Call of Duty game.
Yeah.
So those are really apples and oranges. That's not a fair comparison. It may have that that mind
the emotional or the sort of like the personal impact, I think, is more significant.
Yes, is greater.
Yeah, for sure.
But the financial impact can't be denied. No. The financial impact that it has that Call of Duty has on the Sony ecosystem and on Microsoft ecosystem as well. And to that point, and we won't belabor the Activision Blizzard King deal too much, but it seems like now here recently that the FTC is rumored to maybe hand down an antitrust lawsuit from the U.S. side. It's still got some questions over on the Europe side in the UK with the CMA. It seems like Sony might actually get some concessions out of Microsoft when it comes to Call of Duty, at least, because that has been Sony's only hang-up is just Call of Duty. I don't think they care about the King part or the Blizzard part.
To be honest, I think so. Like, there's that whole deal that sort of like Sony was like, Microsoft was like, we offered them a 10-year deal. I'm willing to bet what Sony wanted was keep it off of Game Pass. Because putting Call of Duty, like, and this is the thing, like they want Call of Duty on Game Pass. And they've said, well, we need it to sell units. Yes, you do. And if you put it on Game Pass for free, that will have a deleterious effect on the Sony ecosystem. That's what Sony's worried about. And part of that is Sony's fault for hitching their horse to Call of Duty, and it's like the over reliance on that. And so and when we get to we get to the Sony stuff, like, oh, believe me, I've got words for them. But I just like, when it comes to all of that, I'm a little kind of just like, dude, and even sort of outside of this, what this signals to me is, again, this major acquisition. You're picking up Call of Duty. You're picking up like things like Diablo and Overwatch 2. Overwatch 2's botched release. It's like, Activision is a company that sort of needs a lot of work done, and I'm not trying, but I think too is like what's sort of flown under the radar is the King connection, and that King I think has Candy Crush, which is like the mobile game that all other mobile games aspire to be. Like the revenue stream on that game alone will probably buoy. I know Game Pass is profitable, like air quotes. That's got to be a very unique construction, in my opinion, of that particular term. And again, I don't know a Game Pass subscriber that doesn't like doctored in with the $1 Xbox Live deal. So anyways, but I'm not trying to throw stones. It's just like there's so much like weird stuff going on with all that I'm like, frankly, I think at this point in time, like if the FTC or the CMA was like, hey, you know what you got to do is you got to Call of Duty has to, as long as you guys produce Call of Duty, it has to be sold on both platforms. And without sort of like, they've got to be sort of, there's got to be performance parity, and you can't put it on Game Pass day and date. And I think, and this is what I was saying, I think at this point in time, Microsoft would be like, fine, whatever. Because I think what they really want is they want King. They want Call of Duty too, but they want King.
Yeah, I'd say it's either they want it on or PlayStation doesn't want it on Game Pass thing, or they want like they want what they've not been doing, as in like the exclusive content, bonus maps, month early, all that kind of stuff. I think they want day and date with that if they don't get the no Game Pass thing. So if you're going to put it on Game Pass, we at least, our version, the version that PlayStation players play will be the same version that the Xbox players will play, as far as content, maps, guns, all that kind of stuff. I think it's one of those two things, I bet. But
like I said, I think in a way, I think Microsoft would just be willing to sort of like whatever you want for Call of Duty, because I think King is a much bigger target than anything else. But I mean,
it's just a big, I think one thing that we haven't really said, we kind of we're dancing around it, but we haven't really said explicitly, is that the way that Microsoft is acquiring studios and apparently not producing things of their own flavor. You know, Nintendo has a flavor about them for sure. Sony has a flavor about them for sure. And a pedigree. We're waiting for that. Nate and I are waiting for that for Microsoft, and we're worried about the style about they're going about it, is that they're just buying everything in. It's like, well, we'll have our library because we're buying Bethesda, who has Elder Scrolls and Starfield and all these great titles that you love, right, buyer? And it's like, well, yeah, but can you make some cool original games, Xbox? Like, you got all these studios, you know, that's kind of where I'm at.
And like my thing is, and I think my big concern with all of that, and this is just like, and again, is you've had these studios in-house for years at this point in time, and we really haven't seen, and like the things that we have seen have not been great. I mean, and that's not true. Yeah. I like I said, the bug game that just grounded. It's supposed to be great, you know, Pentiment, critically acclaimed. Like but it's just like, it's been really slow going, and it makes me want like I'm just saying, like if I'm on like, and again, I'm a letter carrier in Western Pennsylvania, so like, you know, none of these guys give two rips what I think, but like if I'm on the board there, I'm gonna be like, or if I'm sort of in one of those C-suite offices, like Phil and I are gonna have a conversation. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, how many years do we have to like pour money into this thing before we start seeing some results? And I'm just saying, like, and again, I like Phil Spencer. I think he's really good for Xbox. I think he's really good. I think he's pretty good for the industry overall. But man, I'm like, dude, like you have not moved the needle at all here, pal. And that's a problem.
With all that said, Nate, what is Xbox's 2022 grade?
I give him a C-. And the only reason is because I don't want to give him a D.
See, so I'm gonna do the same thing we did for Nintendo, where I think we're in the same headspace. I'm just gonna be a little bit harsher with my grade. I'm gonna say D+. Yeah. You can't put out that lineup of first party games and say it's a good year. You can say, like, well, what about insert game A that was, or game X that was on Game Pass? Every single year, there are good games to play. 2022 has been a bad year for video games.
That's you and I differ on this
one. What
one.
about Elden Ring? What about God of War? What about this? What about there's what about
so many cool indies this year?
There's always good games compared to most years. This is a slow year, and Xbox was one of the primary reasons for that slow year, because they put out nothing. Like nothing that's really worth getting stirred up or getting the community stirred up about. So D- for Xbox. Yeah, Game Pass is still great. Yeah, you got exclusives on there. Yeah, xCloud is coming into its own. Where are your exclusive games? Why should I go to Xbox? I have not had Game Pass turned on in a while. I was talking about getting it turned on with Adam the other day to kind of catch up with some games, but there's just no real reason for me to go over there and invest my time in it. There's just like, well, I can get this over here and own it. I'm gonna say D- for there.
You mean D+. I gave him a C minus.
D plus. Yeah, excuse me, D
I mean,
plus, not D minus.
He changed it. He got angrier as he went on. I mean, that is really the thing. Like, if I had an Xbox right now, the thing was like, why would I turn it on? You know.
Yeah.
So I guess this leaves maybe the best for last, or maybe the best tongue lashing for last.
Yeah, we'll see. Obviously, we got PlayStations here to talk about. Major exclusives for 2022: Horizon Forbidden West, Gran Turismo 7, God of War Ragnarok. If you want to count these two, I got them listed here: Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection and Last of Us Part 1. Those are technically remasters of older games. So really just kind of those three big boys: Horizon, Gran Turismo, and God of War. I don't think I missed anything else from first party. Those are three big AAA games, though. Otherwise, you got Ghostwire Tokyo, Sifu, Stray, Rollerdrome, Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Reunion comes out here at the here in December, here in just a few weeks. So that's sort of a smattering of some of the big exclusives that they've had this year. So let's just start right there.
Just a quick point of correction too. I think I referred to Forza as GT7 earlier, and I just want to say I meant Forza. Sorry.
I will smack your hand right now virtually for that. Okay.
But
what do you think of this list?
I mean, dude, it's fine. It's pretty weak as far as like big, like blockbuster kind of like. The thing is, it's definitely slow. I mean, but it's also not that far off. Like, how many? 2018. Let's sort of look back at that. That was Horizon Zero Dawn, right? I think Spider-Man, or was Horizon Zero Dawn 2017?
That was 2017.
Okay, so you had Spider-Man, and then you had God of War as sort of the big swings from Sony. I think like, you know, 2 or 3, you know, bigger first party exclusives is sort of par for the course for them. What I would say is the kind of the problem is that they and I know that for some people this is going to be a really unpopular take. I think they sort of did a little bit of like hamstringing themselves by making these things PS4 compatible or PS4 like.
Yeah, we talked about that just a little bit with God of War just a little bit ago.
And I'm not trying to be unkind, but like, yeah, some of the warts show up. I think when you see some of that PS4 design, when they're not leveraging that really big, that super fast NVMe hard drive and all that, like all of the, I mean, I honestly, like if somebody said like, what's the reason to own a PS5? I'd say like like when you see like the performance sort of step up and all of the extra stuff that it does under the hood, I'm like, that's why. When you see a game like Returnal and stuff. But I mean, this year, I'd say the first party title lineup is fine. I mean, like, dude, like we've talked, I love God of War. I haven't played Horizon Zero Dawn. What was the other one? GT7. GT7 is like, it looks pretty, but like, I don't do sim racers. So, you know, give me a good, like, you know what I want? I want PlayStation to do. Give me a really beautiful looking, like, arcade style racer, like a la Burnout Revenge. And like, yeah, let me smash up those really pretty cars and like, let me do some like crazy stuff with physics with those really gorgeous models and set them, you know, explode a bunch of stuff. But
did you ever play the MotorStorm series on PlayStation 3?
No.
Racing series there. That was a lot of fun. That kind of was a little bit of that vibe. But yeah, I love the Burnout game. Something like that it is more up my alley. I played all three of these games, God of War being I think the best. Forbidden West is right up there as well. Yeah, this is a good year, I think. It's quantity, not that much. Quality, it is as AAA as you get with these three games. We talk about Colin Moriarty a lot. I think he says Horizon Forbidden West is the most AAA game he's ever played, kind of thing. He always says that. I agree. God of War is the same way. It's just oozing, dripping with production. And GT7 looks like you're looking at real life like photography. They're all great. So, really solid year. It's just maybe another game or two could have been nice from first party. Which is where I think you see things like Last of Us Part 1, Ghostwire Tokyo come in, and kind of these games that sort of fill in the gaps where they don't have tentpole releases. So yeah, solid year for Sony. Definitely just a kind of predictable year. Gran Turismo, that's a known quantity, and then two more kind of over the shoulder third person action adventure games that are one's open world, one's kind of open world. So yeah, that's certainly their wheelhouse, and nothing crazy going on there. So looking at the rest of 2022 for Sony, one of the big things that happened right after the acquisition of Activision Blizzard by Microsoft is that they went out and acquired Bungie for $3.6 billion, kept them independent. They're going to keep making Destiny. They're going to make another game that will release for all platforms. Yeah. Sony just apparently wants their live service expertise, their employee base. They want the resources that Bungie represents. So talk to me a little bit about this Bungie deal and what you think it means for Sony in the future.
Well, one, I would say two, I think that they do sort of see it as being advantageous on having Destiny 2. Like Destiny 2 makes a lot of money. Maybe not COD money, but it makes a lot of money. And it is like I mentioned earlier, this is the year that I sort of fell down the Destiny 2 well. There's a lot to love about that game. A lot of really just, yeah. And so like, I think like they're interested in those revenue streams just as much as they're interested in the tech, because Bungie does bring not just the sort of like the online and the service sort of the online brain, just like, yeah, they're bringing in sort of an expertise when it comes to like the online services and that infrastructure and all of that surrounding stuff. But they're also like a top tier first person shooter developer. And so like, I think that, especially so we talked about the weakness of sort of attaching themselves to COD. I think maybe part of the solution here is like you bring Bungie in house, you either like draw some of that, like you keep the talent, because like that was one of the big things is like almost $1 billion of that deal was set aside strictly for retention of talent. Like basically keeping the staff in house because that's what they really wanted. And so I think maybe sort of like drawing them into more Sony oriented projects, possibly. But yeah, leveraging their expertise. I think it was sort of interesting and I think unfairly some people are like, because like the whole sort of thing with the Microsoft acquisitions has been like, they're just like buying everything, right? Like if it's up for grabs at all, like Sony's like, here's a giant pile of money, like come be a Microsoft studio now. And that's fine because that's sort of always been in a way Microsoft's MO. But whereas the acquisitions that have come from Sony tend to be a little more, I think the term was organic. And this was like just the first like big, like what? Like, and it kind of, I think came out of the blue. Right. I think it's sort of it was sort of, and again, these things don't happen overnight. So it's like, who knows how long they were talking about this, but it does sort of seem like maybe Sony caught wind of like, and heard that Microsoft was sniffing around ABK and they said, well, we need to sort of do something to maybe not level the playing field per se, but sort of make sure that we have options. And I don't think it was a bad move at all. Like
I don't think it was necessarily reactionary to the ABK deal. I think, like you said, it takes more time for these sort of things to happen, especially when you consider we know how quickly the ABK deal came together with Microsoft in November and definitely into December last year. But anyway, what it is showing though is showing a different Sony. It's showing a Sony that like you said, to your point, it isn't grabbing this company organically. We've never really worked with Bungie in a capacity like we've worked with, the likes of Bluepoint and these sorts of Housemarque, these types of developers that Sony has been acquiring here lately. So it kind of segues into this point about the policies and this era of PS3 era Sony coming back. And you know, we're going to bump up the price of the PlayStation 5 $50 and every other region outside of the US. We're going to charge $70 for our games now instead of $60. We're going to release The Last of Us Part 1, Part 3 remaster, remake.
Oh my.
And you know, all this kind of stuff. Like, are we, and just the Bungie thing was kind of a segue into it. Are we in this era now? Well, we're not even in PS3 era Sony. We're in something completely
we're
different.
PS5 country now.
Like what are we who are used to, let's say, the golden age? I'm gonna call it, of the PS4 era, even though it was really recently. I'd say that was, in my opinion, that was maybe one of Sony's best consoles. Are we getting away from that? Are we getting away from the God of War Horizon type of over the shoulder third person game, where we're getting into more live service, Fortnite, Factions Part 2. What's going to happen here?
I mean, so with all of that being said, I don't know. It's still sort of too early. There have definitely been moves from Sony that make me nervous. There have been times where it does sort of feel like this is the PS3 sort of mentality sort of like resurfacing, coming back. I think too with good old crying Jim Ryan, that is a Sacred Symbols TM, folks. So I'm just borrowing that. But with he's a bean counter, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think he's very, like, a lot, the financial stuff is like way more prevalent. I think coming out of this, like, or we're sort of in this depression or whatever they're calling it, depression, recession kind of economy. It's and Sony, like, listen, I think the $70 price tag on games and people's reaction to that is just like, or overreaction to that is kind of ridiculous. For anybody who's been paying attention, like, video games have been like $60 for like the past like 25 years. And the fact is that the market has sort of, like, inflation has sort of consistently been on the rise. Like, cost of living has consistently gone up. The cost of manufacturing has consistently gone up. And so the fact that these things have been so static for such a long period of time, and that people are so up in arms about paying $70 for games, like, one, it's them, like, and now, frankly, I think, like, they're kind of like shooting them, or like kind of like, looking at and being like, why? It's like, we just raised the price of these so that we could maybe start to, like, maybe break even a little bit more on some of this, or sort of, make a little bit more profit, extract a little bit more profit out of these, because, like, these are very, like, when you talk about, like, Sony first party stuff, like, dude, like, I don't know how much it costs to develop Horizon or Forbidden West or God of War Ragnarok, but I'm telling you, it was a lot. It was a lot of money, and they need to recoup those costs, and they do recoup some of that through sales and everything else. But, like, you have to move hundreds of or not hundreds, but like millions of units, to sort of make all that math work. And a lot of people have to get paid out of all that. And so, like, the $70 price tag, like, to me, I was just like, am I happy about that? No, but I was like, to me, it's not that big a deal. Because I'm a big believer in, like, paying for, like, giving things their proper value, and, like, like, paying people what they're worth. And I think, especially for some of these Sony first party titles and stuff like that, they're definitely worth, like, the $70 price tag.
Yeah. Well, not even talking about the inflation. It's like, well, we've been paying $50 or $60 for 25 years, whatever. Don't even, like, count the inflation, just the amount of money it costs to make a big game today as it did in 1992. you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars more. So, you know, the fact that they're charging $70, I'm like, cool, yeah, I'll gladly pay that. You know, this piece of art that you're putting out. I have a I always perpetually kind of have that like, wow, honey, come over here and look at this. Look at this room. Look how real this looks. Like, look at the detail. Look at how they like the set dressing and how they put all this stuff on the shelf here and these pencils here in the cup and all this kind of stuff. It's like, it's so detailed. And some artists made all that, put all that there, and you could completely walk by it in a third person game and not even see it. You don't even turn the camera over there and look at that thing, and you don't even appreciate it. And someone put many hours into that thing. And it's like, you know, Sony or whoever made the game had to pay that employee their wages to make that little, those pencils in the cup that on that desk for that thing that you might walk by and not even see. Yeah. And it's like that. I appreciate that kind of stuff. I like to stop and smell the roses in these types of games. It takes me, I'm about to hit the 50-hour mark in God of War, and I don't even have the platinum. I'm going to be well beyond that. Mark. And you're supposed to be able to get the platinum in like 45, 50 hours. I just stop and smell the roses.
On that, like maybe I'm slow rolling through the game way too much too, but I'm calling shenanigans on that. They're like, you should be able to get the platinum in 50 hours. I'm like, says who?
Well, my point is that it takes a lot of effort, a lot of money to make.
Dude,
God
the
of War
snow
Ragnarok.
in Ragnarok was like, dude, I don't know, like, especially with like the DualSense and everything, like in that opening sequence, like when you're walking through some of that snow, I was like, oh, this is so cool.
Yeah, the crunch. You feel the crunch of the snow,
and
like,
then
in the controller and
like
stuff.
watching it sort of like now, and of course, like I'm playing it in like the performance mode with like I'm playing it, but like watching like the little bit of drifts back into the holes and the trail. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is top shelf, really cool stuff.
Yeah, it's talking about, you know, production per square inch. You know, it's not cheap. So I'm fine shelling out $70 for that experience, because I want those experiences to keep coming. I don't want to get, no offense, I'm sure you're having a great time with it. If for those who are having a great time with it, I don't want Gotham Knights. I don't want a subpar experience where like you're going to give me this action heavy, over the shoulder, open city detective mystery action game, and
you don't want all them chicken nuggets.
You know, like that box of chicken nuggets, super good. It's a good game, I'm sure, in many aspects, but I'd rather, this is a bad comparison, I'd rather eat at like, Five Guys instead of McDonald's. You know, you talk about fast food hamburgers, I prefer that, so we're kind of going down a rabbit trail here, anyway, so it's questionable Sony, questionable policies, like whether it's, the price hiking
of the PS5 in other markets was definitely an ugly look. And it's, as far as I can tell, I don't know if it's ever been done before, historically. And it was sort of like, I think more than anything, it was an easy sort of stick for Microsoft to like beat them over the head with a little bit, in the public, the courts of public opinion. The release of PSVR 2, like, and the whole sort of, or the announce of PSVR 2, the entire rollout with that. There's been a lot of really like perceived non-consumer friendly kind of stuff. I mean, and even like, dude, like I'd like to sort of talk about like, you and I we've done episodes of the breakdown or whatever on the PS Plus Extra and Essential and all that stuff. Even the rollout there, and I personally think it's fine. Don't get the premium if like you don't want to play like the 10 old games that they have on there. I'm also of the opinion like it's like $120 or whatever. It's like, and the extra is like $100 for a year. Premium's like $120. And I'm like, what did you expect for $20? Like, it's like, but I think looking at all of it, the biggest problem is that Sony has really, this last year especially has been just misstep after misstep in the courts of public opinion. And they just do these things that are perceived as being not consumer friendly. Whether they actually are or not is sort of, I think that's a little up for grabs. And what I will say is I think that they are actively trying to protect the market where you can actually buy things. Whereas I think, I think because that's where they're thriving, like they're sort of dominating there. And so they're not protecting it out of the goodness of their hearts. And it's not to go down the Game Pass thing. Like one of my biggest concerns about just subscription models in general is that it further degrades the consumer's rights to material. When you are subscribing to a service, like they can pull that off they can pull a game off the service at the drop of a hat. They don't really have to explain anything to you because it's probably all covered in the EULA, and you have no rights to any of that. Whereas when you buy something, even when it's a digital license, there are certain rights that you're guaranteed.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that's included kind of in this whole weird policy, Sony is what I'm calling silent Sony.
Oh yeah.
Like they just we're just not going to have an E3. We're not going to have a showcase. Oh, you thought we were going to have one in May, but nah, we're not going to do that. Maybe in September. Actually, never mind. I don't know when we're going to have one. You'll be there when we show up. And it's like, Sony, what are you doing, man? Like we literally know nothing about what's coming out for 2023 after God of War, other than like we know Spider-Man and Wolverine exists, but like, is Spider-Man coming out next year? I don't know. Like, show me some games. What's even coming out next year? I have no idea.
Well, Colin Moriarty has said that he's basically said he thinks they're being quiet because he's pretty sure that we're not going to like what they have to say.
Then why say it at all if that's the case? If you're going to wait to say it,
I don't think that's the case at all. I don't. I think right now they're being really quiet because one of the big sort of things that Activision, like with the ABK, and this is the thing, the ABK stuff has been so central.
Oh, so you're going tinfoil hat?
No,
here?
I don't think it's tinfoil hat thing. I think like Microsoft has consistently said, so like that stupid line from what's his face, Satya.
Satya.
Yeah, like let's have Sony. You have your exclusives. Why can't we have our exclusives? Like, man, I got a whole sewer full of.
If you want competition, let us.
Like I got a whole sewage full of garbage you can suck down there, pal. On that one, like okay, but that was just such a dumb. That whole thing was so dumb. It made me so angry. But I think like the thing is with all of this ABK stuff, like Microsoft has consistently said Sony has exclusives. They guard those exclusives, like, you know, and they've even said like when we have stuff, we usually do release it into like at least into the PC sphere. We do this, we do, you know, like they're saying like we play nice. Sony doesn't. Sony has its exclusives. It guards its exclusives, and you know what they're doing. And I think it's not entirely unfounded. It's not an entirely unfounded accusation on Microsoft's behalf, right?
No, it's not.
It's a little disingenuous, but it's not unfounded. And I like, dude, I just think like Sony's like, we're just going to be quiet. We're just going to be quiet because like if we do like if they do make it, like if they did like a giant spectacle for like Ragnarok, dude, you can bet like everybody on Twitter be freaking out about like, oh, new Sony exclusive, you know, and Microsoft would just be. And I think a lot of it is like they have done such a poor job of managing expectations and sort of like just like being on the internet. Like, and sort of like their hype machine is so busted and they don't know where to sort of get it back on the track on the rails here. And I'm just saying like,
do you think Sony's going to show up at the Game Awards, which will be in 2 Fridays from when we're recording? It'll be this coming up Friday for when you're hearing this on public feeds, December 9th. Do you think they'll be there in any capacity?
I mean, dude, like then you're getting into the question that do the VGAs really even matter? I mean,
well, that's not the point. Like, Jeff Keighley has world premiere trailers. They're peppered throughout the whole thing. So, like, is one or two of those going to be from a Sony first party studio?
Hope. I mean, and that's what I'm saying. Like, it's like a 3-hour like commercial and promo sort of extravaganza. Yeah. I mean, I could hope, but I think Sony too has been, like I said, I think they're a little like spooked when it comes to like the social media, sort of like the perceived. Like how the public looks at them. And I mean, I hope so, but I think too, like, and I'll be, what I will say is I actually kind of like them being quiet and not, and I know that it's like, I don't like it because it's like, what are you doing? I want to know what you're doing. But the other side that I do like is like, they just they put the thing out there. And it's like, dude, They show it when it's ready. They put the game out there and they let the work speak for itself. I mean,
yeah, I've got a half tinfoil hat. I subscribe to a little bit of that ABK stuff. You know, they're kind of just waiting that out so that sort of that for the dust to settle in that deal. I think the other part of it is simply the games aren't ready. And you know, like we just said, they show them when they're ready. I don't think the games are ready. I think there's going to be a bit of a lull in early 2023. Or a lot of 2023, perhaps, for Sony first party. And I just don't think there's games that are going to be ready. Not a lot of them. I think, going back to the Game Awards, I think we're going to get a full trailer for Factions 2, The Last of Us Factions 2. I think we'll get that because that was at Jeff Keighley's last event. And if you remember, it closed out that event. I think it was opening night live or something like that. It was like the closing thing, the big thing to shut down the show. So I have a feeling that Neil Druckmann might show back up on stage with Jeff and have a Factions drop. That's maybe.
I could hope so. I like the thing is, I just don't like. I don't even know what Sony is thinking anymore. I'm like I'm just either. Like, dude, like you're a bunch of like crazy people over there, and it makes me a little nervous. Also, it's a little exciting. It's kind of like when you're you know, and I'm not trying to be like, please don't take this the wrong way, folks. But like when you're a teenage boy and you're dating that girl and she's kind of crazy, but she's also like stupid hot. And you're just like you scare me, but you're also a lot of fun. You know,
what a good analogy.
And it's like, and I'm not like, that's kind of like what Sony feels like is like that it's kind of like putting off that crazy girl energy where I'm like, what, like, and it, female listeners, please, I'm not trying to be a sexist weirdo here. I'm just saying like, it could work the other way. It's like, you know, there's that really dark and brooding dude that I don't know, but it's just like, it kind of like has like,
this is how I'll encapsulate it. Spider-Man 2 and Wolverine are the tippy top of my list of games I want to play. I'm frightened about the rest of their slate and what they might do with the 10 live service games before 2025 thing. That frightens me to death as a PlayStation fan. So yeah, but like, dude, while yes, I think they'll still do what Sony usually does, they're also clearly doing something different.
And they need to.
And I might not like that.
I think they need to. And what I would say is like, I'm kind of interested, like I don't know, like, but I'm interested, like as somebody who's sort of like dipping their toes into the games as a service kind of stuff with like Destiny 2. And I like with that Sony sort of pedigree behind some of that stuff, like we could get something really awesome, like really like mind blowing awesome. Of course it could be just like total swill. Too, but yeah.
Well, Nate, we're getting kind of long in the tooth here. Let's go ahead and give a grade to Sony so we can close this out and look a little bit to 2023. What grade would you give Sony?
I'd probably put them in the same as Nintendo camp. Like it's B. Like it's a solid effort. I think there's a lot of unpredictability. I think they haven't really read the room in a lot of ways. They've kind of made some really unfortunate decisions as far as like just like pricing.
Weird Sony is here.
It's definitely like weird Sony energy. I think too, like and we didn't touch on it, but like the whole remake stuff, like the remaking of The Last of Us Part 1, and it's I think it's been confirmed that the Horizon Zero Dawn remake.
Yeah, it's a rumor.
Oh, it is a rumor? Okay.
Yeah, I think
but like, that just feels like skeevy and weird, and sort of, I understand sort of the intent behind it, but I'm also like, too soon, boys, too soon. Like it is sort of a very like read the room kind of moment for me.
Yeah,
but
I think I'm similar with you in that I'm kind of around Nintendo with the grading. I think for me, obviously the games spoke to me way more, but all the other kind of stuff with Sony spoke to me way more compared to Nintendo's slate of 2022 games is what I meant. But all the weird Sony stuff really bogged it down. So I'm going to say I'm upset but at the same exact spot. I think I said B- for Nintendo. I'm gonna say B- for Sony as well.
I think it would actually sort of line up with that B- even, because it feels fine, but it's like, man, there's some really questionable stuff.
Like there's a lot to improve on it. If you're saying like, you're trying to get 100 on a test and you get an 82, it'd be a B-. I'd be the teacher. Like there's a lot of room for improvement here. You did a lot of good things.
You did really well, but there's still a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah. Okay, Nate. So let's quickly take. Really, all I have jotted down here is a list of games and a little comment about the Switch Pro, which I'll delete because we already talked about that. Is a list of games coming out for each platform holder, as far as like exclusive titles or whatever, coming out next year. So we don't have to predict storylines or whatever, kind of what the outlook for the whole company is, but just kind of give me maybe, one or two from Xbox, Nintendo, PlayStation, some games that you're looking forward to that you think deserve some attention.
So I'm looking at the list here. As far as like Nintendo goes, obviously Tears of the Kingdom is going to be huge. Definitely on my radar. Definitely. So I think it's on everybody's radar.
Do we get a proper 3D Mario in 2023?
Honestly, dude, I thought that was going to, like, I mean, it's a little bit behind the scenes kind of stuff. I thought that was going to be this year. I thought they were going to sort of like pull like oh, hey, new 3D Mario platformer, like, and sort of like give you like 3 months to sort of prep, like, because they've been doing that really snappy like turnaround and timetable. I was like, I really thought that this year was going to sort of be that. I don't know, dude. Nintendo's a bit of a wild card too. I think, like, honestly, with Tears of the Kingdom coming out, they're probably gonna like hold off on that. That's just me. Or it'll be like, whereas Tears of the Kingdom supposed to, when is Tears of the, is that summer?
In May?
Yeah,
I think.
so
May,
spring, early summer, kind of like. I feel like that's crowding the year a little bit. The other thing I would say is Pikmin 4. Like that's sort of that's one of those things that like that's like cool. Pikmin is not like my favoriteest thing in the whole wide world. And I'm like, it's cool. Josh, our buddy, my co-host, our friend Josh, really likes the Pikmin games, and I think it is like one of those things where you see Nintendo being a little more creative. So I'm into those for Nintendo. As far as Xbox, the two that I'm looking at, like, I think Redfall is going to be like, I think I have absolutely, like, Arcane's going to, like, they're just kind of killing it. So I think that's going to be fine.
It looks really good. That last gameplay trailer they released about a month or so ago looked pretty solid. No
questions. No, I think it's just going to be like good. Like, I think they've sort of proven themselves at this point in time. The ones that I'm sort of really curious about, okay, Starfield, just like, is it going to sink or swim? Who knows?
Yeah.
And so more of that, but I think the other one is Senua's Sacrifice, or Saga rather, Hellblade 2.
Right.
So I actually, like, and again, like a little bit of inside baseball, I drafted that this year. I thought that was going to be this year. But I also played Hellblade for the first time this year. And my sort of question, and you and I have had this conversation, and I've had this conversation with Josh, I think even maybe on the breakdown proper. when you play Hellblade, okay, and I'm gonna like, it does a very specific thing, and if it didn't do that very specific thing, it would be a middling game, a really pretty game, but very middling. Because it did the thing that it did, and there's that big sort of like, it's not even a spoiler or a reveal, but like, it's when you see the trick, it's like, oh, this is really cool. And my thing is, how are you going to repeat that same sort of trick? I'm a little concerned about this one because it's like, you already know the rub. So what are you going to do here with this one to sort of, that's it. So I'm excited to see about it. I may draft it again next year. I'm sort of like, you know, or I might keep it. It might be maybe your keeper. I don't know yet. There's so many unknowns next year, but that's one where I'm like, I'm not as like up on it as I was. Let's just say that. So,
yeah, we need to see it again. I think, and anything for PlayStation. You want to call out?
Dude, I'm gonna straight up bag on Forspoken. Like this game.
Are you out of your freaking mind?
Like, did I just move that with my mind? So it's like, oh, so I do magic now. That's a thing. Like, I'm like, dude, like, it's so easy to sort of like rip on this one. I do not think this, like, I'm just going to say, like, come out and say, like, I do not think this game is going to do well. I think it's going to be beautiful. I think it's going to play well. But frankly, I think like the sort of like garbage dialogue and just like, I would love to be in that writer's room. And you know, they can't really do anything with it. Like, they're not going back and rewriting scripts or anything like that. And unless it's like totally a subversion of expectations, who knows?
I'm ready for that 75 Metascore, and I'm totally gonna be swimming in sevens.
Swimming in sevens, like swimming in sevens for sure. I mean, I'm excited about a lot of Sony's lineup. If I'm being honest, Horizon Call of the Mountain, like this is going to be the argument for like PSVR 2. This is like the case study. This is the big thing. So it'll be interesting to see how that does. Final Fantasy 16 as an exclusive. Like, oh, dude, the spectacle on that. Like, there's a lot of like, you know, because it is taking Final Fantasy in sort of a different direction than I think a lot of the more traditional people, sort of the traditional fans, are interested in. I like, that's very up. Dude, I mean, I'm just looking at Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Spider-Man 2, though, on that list, Spider-Man 2 is the one like I'm the most excited about. Spider-Man 2018 was one of my favorite experiences on the system. I think pound for pound, as far as gameplay goes and just overall experience, it is a better experience than God of War 2018. God of War is the better, like, the better blending of like weighty narrative and gameplay, and like Spider-Man is the better video game. God of War was the better experience. Like, and you know, and so
I'm just so thrilled with what with the output that Insomniac has been producing lately. They're kind of crushing it for Sony. You know, the fact that, you know, Spider-Man came out 3 or 4 months after God of War in 2018. I remember it was April and I think September, I want to say, between those two games. So, you know, theoretically you think like, well, on that same schedule, Insomniac should have Spider-Man 2 ready in a few months after God of War Ragnarok here. But, you know, they've produced Miles Morales, Ratchet and Clank.
Insomniac is the studio that does. It's like, it's not, I don't want to say the little studio, but it is the studio that does.
Yeah, well, as Sony Santa Monica has not produced anything since God of War 2018.
Yeah.
So it's like, they've had a little bit more time to work on it, work on Ragnarok. I mean, obviously Spider-Man 2, totally looking forward to. If Final Fantasy VII Rebirth hits, like, I guess December 2023, winter 2023, whatever they said, that's going to be fire. I am so on board for what they're doing with Final Fantasy VII Remake. This is This is truly special what they're doing with this story. I feel like if you're a fan of the original and you've played this game and you're aware of what they're actually doing here, it's pretty darn cool. Very much looking forward to the follow-up to Final Fantasy VII Remake. So that'll be on the tippy top of my list if it hits 2023, but we'll see about that. Dear listeners, man, we've kind of chopped up all the big three. We looked at next year, some games we're excited about. But like I said at the top of the show, this is the one and only episode we're getting for December. So since it's the quote unquote last episode of the month, we got to do, of course, some patron shout outs. Nate, would you like to join me for this journey
like
of patron reading?
If you guys are okay with that, sure. That'd be cool.
Yeah. You want to read those blues and I'll take the reds after you?
Sure. So the patron thank yous. Yeah. Aaron L. White, Alex Castellanos, Boulder. I like your name, Boulder. That's a bold move, Cotton. Chris Freeman, Christopher Commander, David Henderson, David Matthews, Derek Smith, Dorian Taylor, Jake Walker, Jeff Jackson Jr., Jimmy Changa, John Hanan, Jonathan Harrison, Josh Brocklow. I know that guy. Joshua, the Super Llama Johnson, Clay Brandon, Kokorodaki, Luke Strain, and Matt Edwards.
Matthew White Chocolate McDougal, Matthew Millsap, Melvin Benson V, Micah Hendrick, Michael Toller, Mr. Butts, Nate McKeever, Porcho, Richard Marroquin, Ryan 1701E, Sam White, Samuel Elicio, Savan Pena, Sojourner, Third Strongest Mole, Tim Syriac, Vincent Yu, Wesley Ray, Yuki Alley, and Zachary Nelson. Thank you so much, patrons. Several of those names are in the listener league. Mr. Joshua Johnson, Super Llama, Michael Toller, Jonathan Harrison. So yeah, we are ready to go. Getting excited about the listener league for next year. Okay, Nate. We can't let you go this episode without some recos for our dear listeners on the way out the door. What are you recommending for this episode?
I mean, sometimes I go like with something esoteric, like do something hard, or maybe read more or take a break from video games. I like to throw the ones that get me hate, out there. But what I will say, and this one's a little more traditional. I mentioned it earlier. Josh and I recently had Mark Erickson from 11.5 Minutes to talk about video games on the show. I really like Mark. I really like his podcast and sort of what he's doing over there. And dear listeners, if this means anything, go check out 11.5 Minutes to talk about video games. It is exactly what it's a short form podcast where he sort of digs deep about like one question about video games. You can listen through the entirety of all of his episodes at this point in time in something like 3 hours. So he's a good dude. I really like the work he's doing over there, and I think you guys should check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I listened to that episode. That was a great episode. It sounds like a really cool outlet over there. I'm going to recommend something I should have been talking about in the past couple of episodes for what he'd been playing, but I didn't ever bring it up. Shattered Remastered. This is a retouching up of an old, one of the original kind of PlayStation Network games for PS3. That really kind of broke through and shined brightly above all the rest. This is a brick breaking game, and a darn good one at that. So if you're, it's a genre that doesn't really exist very much anymore. I don't know that many games in the genre, but if you have nostalgia for games like Alleyway or Arkanoid or games like that, definitely check out Shattered Remastered. It's for every platform: Xbox, Switch, PC, PlayStation. You can get it everywhere. It's probably $10-15, and you can get you at least a solid 7 to 10 hours.
Yeah, and it's got a soundtrack that slaps. Just absolutely, you know, as the kids say or want to say, it slaps.
Yeah, very great, great product over there. Shattered Remastered. All right, dear listeners, thank you so much for joining us for episode 232. Nate, thank you for hopping on,
thanks
man.
for having me on, man. Like, we did okay. This is not like breakdown territory.
Not bad.
I think it's a
Not
little
bad.
beefy for TRG usuals, but you guys are only doing one episode this month, so give them a little extra.
There you go. Maybe Skinner will go a little bit harsh on it, but hopefully he'll go easy on us. Nate, where can talk about the breakdown? Where can people find you?
So the breakdown is on Twitter. It's like BB Downcast on Twitter. We have an Instagram. I want to say it's like Backlog Breakdown on Instagram. I do the social media posting, but I don't pay attention to it. We're on, if you look up hashtag Backlog Breakdown, it's usually going to be us. We actually have a really cool logo that the dear commander himself, the hostess with the mostest, hooked us up with. It's the sweet BB Down logo. We're sort of on all the major socials. I mean, you guys probably, it's the podcast, it's the hashtag Backlog Breakdown on all the different podcatchers. I think we're on Spotify and all that stuff. But yeah, dude. I mean, if you want to follow me, I'm at Nate_McKeever on most platforms. In fact, pretty much everything that I'm on, that's usually where you can find me. So, but yeah, man.
Excellent.
Hey, thanks for having me on. It was an absolute blast, dude. And
yeah, always welcome back here. Of course, had a blast with you. Always do. So, dear listeners, that is it for 2022. I guess we won't see you until next year. I'm probably going to do, for patrons, I'm probably going to do a patch notes in December. Talk about some of my Game of the Year nominees, like Logan just did for November. But other than that, that is it until January. So be a deer, keep it locked here. We'll see you next year.
Oh man, it rhymes.